Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we're going to be taking a look at the results of and your comments from the poll that asked the question, what is the best song or musical piece from the prequels? And getting right to the results, I don't think too many people are going to be surprised to see that Duel of the Fates took the top spot with 67% or 2/3 of the total vote. In second place then was Battle of the Heroes with 16%, followed by Anakin's Betrayal which got 8%, then Across the Stars which got 6%. There was then another 3% of people who thought something else was the best, and they of course brought up many of those pieces in the comments that could have easily made this poll, if I could list more than 5 choices that is. Anyway, wasting no time this week, let's get right to the comments. And as always, thank you to everyone who does vote and comment. And as usual, some that I'm about to read were handpicked by me, others were randomly selected, and others still were selected because they were highly rated. And speaking of that, we'll start as we always do with the top rated comment, and this week it came to us from Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "The real question is how you expect us to just pick one." And by the fact that this was the top rated comment, and many people left a comment very similar to this one, I think it really goes to show just how beloved and masterful the entire score of the prequels is. And furthermore, it really begins to tell you just how important John Williams is to Star Wars. You can't overstate just what he means to this franchise, and how amazing his work has been over the years. And that takes us right to a comment then from Alex Headley, who said, "The prequels were the peak of Williams' talent, not just in Star Wars alone, but in his entire career. His work in those films surpasses all he had done before and since." And though I certainly think you can make that argument, it's hard to go against that time period where he was doing such things as Jaws, the original Star Wars trilogy, Close Encounters, Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and probably some others I'm forgetting. I mean, that's a lot of my childhood memory, so maybe I'm a little biased, but for me, that was John Williams at his finest. The late 70s, early 80s, he's created some of the most memorable themes throughout history. And don't get me wrong, prequels, Harry Potter, and some other things he's done more recently, also phenomenal. The guy is he's just a genius. Okay, next up, this comment from Kips Corp, who said, "I don't think you can compare any of these pieces. They're all great because they transmit the emotions that are meant to be transmitted. Duel of the Fates expresses suspense and battle. Across the Stars depicts the galactic vibe to the romance, even though the romantic storyline is terrible. And Battle of the Heroes makes the stakes and emotions seem real. All in all, I think John Williams found a way to send us into a galaxy far, far away, making me love them all." And yeah, I do think you're right that it's hard to compare them because they convey very different feelings and emotions and come from very different parts of the movie. And his work does have a way of just sending you to a galaxy far, far away. All I have to do is put it on and close my eyes and I can see Duel of the Fates in my head or any of these other scenes. Now, that might be because I've seen the movies so often, but really, he does have this way of just transporting you to a galaxy far, far away. And I literally could not imagine what Star Wars would be today, if anything, if not for his music. Moving on now to a comment from Nerd Squad, who said, "Alright, so I know Duel of the Fates would win this, and overall it is probably the best score out of them. However, the emotion that is in Battle of the Heroes is unmatched. It is the best scene from the prequels, and all that emotion in it makes it my favorite." And this might also be my favorite because it meshes together everything so well. It's epic, and it needs to be because this is the culmination of everything. This is the Anakin vs. Obi-Wan battle we've been waiting for. And then it also has this ferocity that matches the pace of the battle itself. And then you can feel Anakin's anger in there as well. And also Obi-Wan's bitterness that he's having to fight his best friend. And because of that, because of just how it sums up that scene so well, I think it gets my vote for best of the prequels. Alright, now onto this comment from James W., who asked, "Would Anakin vs. Obi-Wan, the theme, be part of the Battle of the Heroes in this poll?" And yeah, I would say more or less it is. They are very, very similar. Now onto this comment from Henry Nugent, who said, "I literally have Duel of the Fates on my iTunes playlist." And doesn't everybody? Next up, TJ Harden, who said, "For me, it's Palpatine's teachings. The music just made that scene incredible and one of the most iconic of all of Star Wars." And yeah, I can agree with that. It's subtle yet haunting at the same time, and it fits the scene and the story Palpatine is telling to Anakin just perfectly. Alright, next up this comment from Tony M, who said, "Duel of the Fates is just a great overall theme, which sums up the Star Wars Golden Age of the Jedi and the malignant rising of the Sith and the War of the Era. The other tracks all tell a story, but Duel of the Fates just has an epic score that sets the tone of the saga." Very well said, and I do think that Duel of the Fates somehow both feels like an homage to the Jedi and their 1,000 years of peace and justice in the galaxy, and their golden era, as you point out, but also foretells the coming of the Sith and the end of the Jedi era. Which then brings us to this comment from Ace Skywalker, who said something very similar. Duel of the Fates is the defining music for the prequel trilogy. And I do agree, which brings us now to this comment from Adam Toriani, who said, Duel of the Fates is getting all the votes because it's the most recognizable, but it's easily outmatched by the others. And though I don't know about it being easily outmatched by others, it is by far the most recognizable, and because of that, because if people are more familiar with it, and maybe not some of the other ones, it did probably get a fair share of votes because of that. Now, does that mean it didn't deserve to win? Well, no, because there is a reason why more people are familiar with it than anything else, and that is, to go along with the previous comments, it does kind of feel like the theme of the prequels. Okay, now onto this comment from ScottSki02, who said, God, what a hard choice. Really, I could pick all 4 of these depending on the day. And I do know exactly what you mean. As I was saying earlier, they all convey different feelings and emotions, and depending on your own mood, you might favor one over another at any particular moment. Okay, now onto this comment from GamingLord777, who said, why is there no all of the above option? And that's because it probably would have won. Okay, now onto this comment from DarkFlames1978, who said, I really love Padme's ruminations. It's so creepy and really adds to the rise of the Sith. I get chills every time I hear it in the Jedi Temple in The Force Unleashed. And though, yeah, it is great in the game, I think it's also part of a phenomenal scene right in Revenge of the Sith, when we flash between Padme and Anakin sitting in the council chamber, where he's trying to decide if he's going to do what Windu has instructed him to do and just wait there and risk that maybe Palpatine might get killed, and he of course feels Palpatine is his chance to save Padme, or if he's going to put her above everything else and risk the fate of the galaxy by maybe having to betray the Jedi to save Palpatine and hence save Padme. It's in many ways the moment that Anakin has to choose the darkness or the light. He has to choose if he's going to be selfish and try to save Padme, or if he's going to be selfless and let the Jedi do what they must. Okay, now on to this comment from Declan G, who said, Anakin's dark deeds is underrated, especially the second half. It pretty much goes along with Anakin's betrayal, but I think it captures the sadness and grief of Obi-Wan, Padme, and Yoda perfectly. Most importantly, it helps to emphasize the weight of Order 66 and Anakin's fall. The best part of the track, probably the last 2 minutes, is when Obi-Wan talks to Padme about Anakin's turn to the dark side. I've seen Revenge of the Sith many times, and if it weren't for that track as well as Anakin's betrayal, Anakin's fall and the Jedi Purges wouldn't have meant as much. Alright, now on to this comment from Private Pezlanek, who said, one of my faves is the beginning of the Battle of Coruscant, that drum. And then this comment from Darko Man, who said, March on the Jedi Temple. It's not here, so I voted for it. And well, fair enough. And then we have this comment from Death Trooper 637, who said, who else has a major soft spot for the Droid March and March on the Jedi Temple? Well, I know I do. Alright, let's now move on to a few comments about Across the Stars, starting with this one from Jackson Dial, who said, I only wish Across the Stars had a better romantic story to go along with it. Then this one from Jammin Davis, who said, Across the Stars. It adds a much needed layer of depth and emotion to Anakin and Padme's relationship. And then also this one from Supreme Leader Smeagol, who said, Across the Stars. It's underrated, but it really just works perfectly and is amazing. It makes me feel like I'm falling in love, lol. I only wish the actual romance scenes had been on par with the amazing music, though. And I do think all 3 of them are kind of touching on why Across the Stars found itself so low on this list. And it's not because it isn't an incredible piece of music, it's because the romance behind it doesn't work for everybody. And if the Padme and Anakin relationship had been handled a little bit differently in the movies, this might have found itself getting a hell of a lot more votes. Okay, now on to this comment from Jake the Gearheart, who said, coming from a violinist and composer, one of the most impressive pieces from the prequels is Anakin's theme. It's a shame it wasn't used more, and it's hard to notice in the films if you're not listening for it, but it truly is a masterpiece. It really deserves a listen. Williams wrote a beautiful and hopeful theme that uses incredibly structurally impressive harmony, and the piece makes perfect use of all the instruments it includes. And the most masterful part of the theme is that it has a dark side of its own. If you listen carefully, a darker theme comes in the background, and when the hopeful theme concludes, it always ends with a hint of the Imperial March. 2 of my favorite unappreciated themes are the Droid Army and the Camino motif. And though by no means am I a musical expert, I've always appreciated Anakin's theme. I think it's beautiful and haunting at the same time, and I love that part that you mentioned about the little hint of the Imperial March that shows up. Alright, and our last comment now comes to us from Eric Binion, who simply says, "The prequels had some of the best scores in cinema history, to be honest." And in closing here, I do absolutely agree with you. Again, though I certainly think some of Williams' older works are more iconic overall. I mean, who doesn't know the themes for Jaws, Superman, Indiana Jones, and so on? But what he did with the prequels is as impressive as anything else he's ever done before, especially when you consider that overall, the prequel movies maybe aren't regarded as highly as the original trilogy, but even those who don't like the prequels or flat out hate them even, will almost always say the score was at least some kind of redeeming quality. And speaking of the original trilogy, that'll of course be the next poll, asking what's the best musical piece from it, and this is where I'll ask for your advice on how to approach it, because even though there is, again, a ton of great songs or pieces from the original trilogy, I think there are maybe 3 that stand out from the rest and are more iconic and mainstream than anything else, and probably have the best chance of winning. Those being the main theme, the Imperial March, and Binary Sunset, though maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, I'm tempted to do a preliminary poll of sorts, of 5 others, excluding the 3 I just mentioned, to figure out what is, I guess you could say, the best of the rest in a way, or what's the best when you take out those 3 very iconic pieces that pretty much everyone, fan or not, knows. And then what I'll do after that is take Duel of the Fates, which of course just won this poll, and then those 3 from the original trilogy I mentioned earlier, and again they're the main theme, Imperial March and Binary Sunset, and then the winner of the best of the rest original trilogy poll, and then put them all together into one final poll. And yes, if you would like, I can of course do a poll asking what's the best music from the sequel trilogy, though to be completely honest, and it's no disrespect intended, I really don't think whatever wins that poll would have a chance of winning the overall poll. Now, I'm not saying there's not good music or iconic music in the sequel trilogy, but I really don't think they currently have what it takes to match anything from the prequels or the original trilogy, but in time, that could certainly change. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to weigh in on the results of this poll, or to tell me how you think I should handle the next one for the original trilogy. Do you like the idea of a best of the rest poll separating out those big 3 I mentioned? And if so, what 5 would you like to see in that poll? Or should I put the big 3 against 2 others, and if so, what should those 2 others be? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.